Well, welcome. We are here today, joined by Boyd Martin. I'm here. I'm Dave Reibstein. I'm a professor of marketing at the Wharton School, and I'm joined by my colleague, Raghu Iyengar. And today our guest is Boyd Martin. And Boyd has a very, very distinguished career and an extremely interesting background that I'm going to let him start off and give us some sense of what that is. And we are going to be talking to him about how the pandemic and COVID has affected him as an athlete as well as his business. So Boyd, thank you very much for joining us. What I'd like to have you do is I'd like to have you start off and give us some of your background, recognizing we're going to try and keep this to 30 minutes. So we can't hear the entire history of your background, but your background, and in particular, I want us to hear about the athletic side of you, as well as the business side, and how long you've been doing this. So let's get us started.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dave and Raghu. It's an honor and privilege being on the call today, and like everyone out there, I've been affected by COVID. It's been a weird and wonderful year this year. And just to give you a little bit of a background on myself, as you might have noticed from my accent, I was born and raised in Sydney, Australia. Both my parents were Olympians. My mother was a speed skater for the United States, and she met my father, who was a cross-country skier at the Grenoble Olympics, and they fell in love. And I grew up in Australia, fell in love with horses, and worked hard at horses. And I'm in this small sport called 3-day eventing. And for anyone that doesn't know, 3-day eventing is basically a triathlon for horses. It's 3 phases. The first day is the dressage, which is very similar to the floor routine of a gymnastic artist. It's where the horse goes around in a sandbox, and there's 3 judges that gives them points for their routine. The second day is the exciting day, which is the cross country, which is over about a 4-mile course, big jumps, cross country through water, over ditches, and that's done on a time. And then the third day of the competition is show jumping, where you've got to take the same horse in and compete it around a short course over the coloured poles. And the best performing horse and rider over those 3 days is the winner. And every 4 years, our sport is all of a sudden on the world stage with the Olympic Games. And for me, this is a big deal. I've been lucky enough to compete at 2 Olympics. I was at the London Olympics in 2012 and the Rio Olympics in 2016. So 2020 was I was gearing up for a huge year. Last year, I won the Pan American Games gold medal in Lima, and I was sort of the hot favorite to win, to represent America at the Olympics. And I think I really had a good chance this year of going to the Olympic Games, and I think I could have won a medal. And you know, like your whole life revolves around this moment, you know, and you've been training, you've got this one horse, and a lot of going to the Olympics is timing, having your horse with the right rider that's in peak condition, fit, performing well right at the beginning of 2020, you're golden. And there's only a small window where you can make the Olympics. And if you don't have the horse, you can be the best rider, or you can have the best horse without a good rider, or you can be injured. And so to me, you know, going to the Olympics, or not going to the Olympics this year was crushing. You know, I'd read, and then in March or April, we sort of got told that the biggest sporting event in the world was cancelled. It was crushing. And, you know, on top of that is we have a business, my wife and I, of training horses, coaching lessons. We have endorsements, and a lot of that does sort of factor around being an Olympic athlete. And, you know, this was, you know, I've got to be careful complaining too much, because there's people out there dying and losing their jobs, and I missed out on going to the Olympic Games. So I don't want to sound too much like a whinger and a moaner and groaner, but it was devastating because a lot of Olympic athletes, they've just got a small window where they can get to this championship. And lucky for me, it's a sport where you can keep going and going and going. So that's a little bit of my background, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
So I just want to note for the record, and it's obvious by what you have on your shirt, and you mentioned it for the 2020 Olympics, but 2012 and 2016, you were also representing the United States. And you've been one of the best imports we have in this country. So congratulations on that.
I was going to say, Boyd, I think, you hit the nail on the head. This has been clearly a tough time for everybody. And I think, as you mentioned, especially for athletes like yourself, gearing up for once in 4-year opportunity to be at the right place, right time, in your case, obviously with the right horse, clearly very crushing. But now that the Olympic Games, at least tentatively, are scheduled for next year, how are you how are you training, and what's happening with, I know as we started this conversation, Dave also mentioned your business side of things. And so how have things been there, and how do you foresee the next year happening with your clients and so on?
So it's a great question. I mean, initially, it was just devastating, and it's funny how you look at things. And I think a lot of the other riders sort of half just put their hands up in the air this year and said, well, I'm going to put my feet up and just coast along and wait till next year. And part of me actually said that this actually turns into a new opportunity. I've got 12 more months to get even better. I've got 12 more months to train my horse and to improve him. With the COVID restrictions, I'm a lot more focused now. There hasn't been these distractions of people coming to the farm and going overseas and coaching clinics. And in a weird kind of way, if I think I could actually personally be in better shape this time, in next year. I think had a year now where there's just been complete concentration of being sort of locked in at the farm here, training the horses, and getting better and better. And I can't say that for everyone. There's been a little bit of in my world, a lot of people say, well, I just sort of give up and this is unfair and I don't want any part of this. And to me, I think you've got to take the silver lining in everything. Business-wise, it's been an interesting year. We have sort of 5 or 6 sources of income. Mm-hmm. One of the sources of income we've had is over the years is prize money. And that's been terrible this year. A lot of the competitions are cancelled, and the ones that have run don't really have spectators or sponsors. So the prize money side of it's been disastrous. Yep. By saying that, horses, a little bit like golf, is just one of those sports or hobbies or activities where people can do it and be sort of socially distanced. Mm-hmm. So I found at our farm, actually, people are coming for more lessons. Our training facilities actually been busier than ever, just because a lot of people are working from home. They're sort of not driving and back and forth to the office. And it is a sport and a hobby that when we're on lockdown, they could sort of sneak out of their house, get on their horse, and sort of escape this sort of new environment. So parts of our business have been much better. The other part that have suffered is endorsements. Part of our income has been sponsors. And we've had a number of the companies that just ring us up and say, look, we can only come up with half of what we're obligated to pay, or there's been 1 or 2 sponsors actually drop out, like their business is suffering. And you could appreciate a company, the first thing that they'd sort of pull back on is sponsorship. So that one sucked a bit. But
Boyd, is that because their business is down, or because you're not doing as many competitions that sort of your overall exposure is down as well?
The message I got basically from 2 or 3 of the companies, and this was in April and May, and said, Boyd, our company, we think we're in for a real rough time for the next 12 months. And we've had meetings and corporate meetings, and we're going to pull back and try and save money from here, save money from there. And I'm sure if you're an executive and you see the money going out and the money coming in, the easiest place I'm guessing would be to save money is, well, we don't really need to pay these guys that aren't competing right now. So that would be my feeling, that those guys have backed off a bit.
Okay. So, and then what are the other sources of business that you have?
I mean, we've got horses in training, and I was terrified that the people that own horses might actually back away. Like, it's been a little bit trendy this year to save money and not spend money. By saying that, I think we've been very, very lucky. We're sort of dealing with the higher end of the market. And I suppose if you own a horse or you have a horse in training, it's a little bit your play money or your hobby, and I was terrified that people might actually sort of pull back a little bit and save some money on their hobbies. And we've been lucky so far. No one's dipped out on having a horse in training with us. Now, I think we're still in for another rough 12 months. So I don't think we're out of the woods yet. And I think that anyone that owns a horse with us that is starting to feel the pinch and the bills are racking up and they've lost their job, that we might lose a couple here and there.
Right. Although I suspect that people that own the horses aren't the ones that are on the lower end of the income scale that are being affected the most by the pandemic. So I suspect you're safe for a while there.
Yeah, we'll just see how it all goes. I mean, we've got all different types of client. We've got the mega wealthy business tycoons, and we've also got the little old lady down the street that loves horses, that owns 1/10 of a horse. So it's we're very proud to have clientele of all different sort of financial status.
Right.
So Boyd, I was very curious, and I think I really like the way that you have looked at the last few months, which is and very similar to what Dave and I have been kind of thinking about, which is with every crisis there is an opportunity, and one should always look at the silver lining and try to see what can one do to make the best of it. Now, in terms of your client base, do you find, for example, the fact that things are becoming more virtual, perhaps there is a bigger set of clients wanting to perhaps meet with you virtually? And kind of get to know you more, and how's that going?
It's interesting. I do a little bit of public speaking, and I've done a bit of public speaking virtually this year, which is, to be honest, it's been quite nice. Usually you have to get on a plane and fly somewhere to a convention or a vet convention or something and talk away. And I've been lucky enough just to do what we're doing here, of pull the iPhone out. And, I think for me, technology is a wonderful thing in the sense of communicating to your owners or your fan base through videos and through text and emails, and coming up with creative ways of trying to get people engaged with what you do without actually physically being at the farm. And it's so much more than riding horses. It's so much more than training horses. It's trying to encourage people to get into the sport and finding the best horses, making enough money, but still improving yourself at the same time. And this sort of juggling act of, I want to be a professional athlete, but I've actually got to make my own money. It's a real, you're the owner, you're the trainer, you're the manager. You're juggling a lot of balls in the air. So it's a wonderful life, but it is a challenge.
Yeah. So Boyd, I didn't confess at the beginning of this that I've known you now for 8 years.
Yeah.
And what I realized is you have a huge operation, and associated with it are a whole bunch of costs. You have a lot of property. You have a large number of people that now work for you, and those costs continue. So your business needs to continue to operate. And so the business side of you is a fascinating part from us at the Wharton School thinking about it. You just got done talking with, in response to Raghu's question about having to try and reach people now virtually and doing some of your speeches that way. Are you doing training that way? And And how is it you do training virtually? Because don't you have to be there to sort of work on training horses and help people ride?
Yeah, interesting question, Dave. When the pandemic first hit, I thought, okay, there's going to be a new opportunity. So I started this process where people from anywhere in the country could send me a video of them training their horse or competing their horse, and then for a fee, I would review the video and then do a voiceover communicating back to the person of the training tips that I'd recommend or advice that I'd give them in their riding. And and that I would never have thought about that before the pandemic. And like all of a sudden, a kid in Idaho or someone in Seattle that might think you're pretty good at what you do can actually connect with you, and I can give them feedback. And I think technology, even though I'm in a very sort of simplistic sport of a horse and a rider, I'm sure that technology is going to change up the face of what we do, in the sense of I think you could be training your horse in the ring at home, and someone on a Zoom meeting like this, your trainer could be in another country watching you train your horse. You'll have an earpiece in and you'll be riding away, and someone actually doesn't necessarily have to be standing next to the ring commentating or directing you. They could be in an office space somewhere.
So I'm very curious about this. You've adapted during this pandemic. I'm wondering what parts of it you sort of anticipate are going to be sticky. That is, what you just got done describing is a new way to connect with somebody that's in Idaho or in Germany. Do you think you're going to be doing that out into the future?
Yeah, I think there's parts of our job that I think I've learned to now communicate. So that one of the key aspects in my gig is to communicate with the people that actually own the horses. And usually they come to the farm, they see the horse, they touch it, they watch the horse train, they can chat to you in person. You go out to dinner that night and you sort of discuss where the horse is going. And that this year has been, and in a weird kind of way, part of it I've enjoyed, because I've been able to stay more focused at the farm. Like I'm just completely and utterly concentrating on training my animal. But for me, the communication process with the owner of the horses has started to become virtual. It started to be emailing videos of the horses. It's updates on social media. It's a whole different way of trying to get the message across to the person that's paying for the horse of how everything's going. So I think I got to say, I think I've enjoyed aspects of that. But personally, I mean, I love talking to people face to face, but it's the world we're living in. It's impossible to do that. So I've had to become like a stockbroker, trying to talk to their clients over virtual.
So, Boyd, just like at least the anecdotal piece of evidence that we see that people owning pets, for example, has suddenly gone up during the pandemic, just because they want to have things to have around in the house. Do you see that your client base perhaps is becoming wider in terms of people who perhaps were not as interested, but now are thinking about other ways to keep themselves occupied? Here's a person who is an Olympic athlete, is now available virtually, and I perhaps may not have to put in the money to actually go see him face to face. Do you see some of that happening? And do you think that would kind of continue after the pandemic, which is kind of just along the lines of what Dave asked, this increase perhaps in interest? Do you think that will be sticky?
Absolutely. I think technology in itself has made a guy like me so much more accessible to the world. Like I think the people that are interested in our sport are people that love horses, or they're interested as you as a person or an athlete. There's not a whole lot of like prize money or money to go along with it. So the people that are interested in you are passionate about horses, and they've had horses connected to themselves in part of their life. And I think technology, be it social media or there's online clinics or these virtual conversations now, means that you don't, you can be, in America, I can be hopefully interesting and be able to be accessible to someone that doesn't necessarily actually shake my hand. And I think, the world before the pandemic's actually going more and more like that, in the sense of these smaller sports, be it dog sledding or 3-day eventing or darts, they're not on mainstream TV, but if you're interested in it, there's a website, there's a Facebook page, there's what we call live streaming of our events, that you can actually become really, really connected and fascinated and really part of these smaller, tiny sports. And I think technology is a big part of that. And I think this pandemic has almost forced someone like me to get more like that. And I think I do think that there's going to be actually a new sort of fan base or clientele that actually from towns and countries or places in America that I've never heard of.
So Boyd, you raise a really interesting question for me. You sort of did some comparison between equestrian and thinking about dog sledding or other non-prime time, sporting events. I'm wondering, are there things that you have learned from some of the other events and how some of the athletes have managed and adapted during these times that you've started learning from? And it's really hard to do that, but are there things that you have learned from observing anybody else in any other sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm always fascinated with other successful athletes. Now, most athletes that I follow are multi-million-dollar football players or boxers or guys that have and I think their world's been turned upside down now, because all of a sudden they don't have spectators. There's no one buying beers and hot dogs at their games. That there's no parking and stuff like that. And I think a lot of those sports people have had to also, and teams you can see are now much more trying to connect with their fans and their clients or the people that follow them through social media and stuff like that. And for me, I think it's important when you've got a business like me that sort of has all these tiny little sources of income. There's a bit of sponsorship here, there's a bit of prize money there, a horse sale there, coaching a clinic there, and there's parts of our business, like when I look at our financial statement, that have gone right down, and then there's other parts of it that's actually gone through the roof. So people pay a fee to bring their horse to our farm and jump the jumps. That's gone crazy good this year. Coaching clinics. So I have been going around and you can socially distance and coach a group of riders, and that's gone nuts this year, because people aren't busy going to shows and competitions. All of a sudden they get obsessed with the training and the coaching and the development of the horse. So that part of our business has gone great guns. So there's I think you've got to evaluate where you are and what you've got, and okay, what can I make the best of it? And it's a bit like a restaurant all of a sudden doing outdoor seating with heaters and things they never would have done, just to see, okay, we've lost a bit here, but can we get a bit from more over there?
So Boyd, I mean, I think you again, the example that you just brought up, kind of, especially for many companies out there who might be smaller entrepreneurs. Perhaps, if you think about exactly the example of the restaurants and some of the small owners, looking back to the 6 and 9 months that you've gone through, again, when March, perhaps people would not have anticipated how long it would last. And clearly, as Dave had mentioned earlier, you may have had to make some changes in the farm. You may have had to make other kinds of changes. Any kind of pieces of advice, guidelines that you think would be helpful for the entrepreneurs out there in terms of how should they kind of weather the storm?
Well, I think everyone's going to have more time on their plate. There's not this driving for an hour to your office and then parking your car and then going up the elevator to get to your, so everyone's going to have more time. For me, I've found that I've had more time with my family. And I know that's going off the topic of your question, but I do think that there's parts of our life where, for me, it's just been this mad race of bang, 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 going from here, got to go to dinner there, and actually being able to calmly have a better family life. And I do think that there's some sort of happiness or calmness about being less frantic at home. Yeah. And I think also we've all got time to or moments to come up with creative new ways of making money. And it might be as something as similar as coaching online or reviewing videos or communicating virtually. It's I think that there's whole different avenues, and I think we've all got to use this and try and find the opportunities in this next 12 months, or however long this lasts. And I don't think our lifestyle is going to change that quickly. So I think we've got to keep weathering the storm here, enjoy the moment, because eventually it's probably going to go back to being how it is, and find parts of your life that I think that are better than what it was, and try and take bits and pieces there and say, well, hang on, when I go back to normal life, I still want to maintain this focus or this uninterruption, which I think is a big thing for me, of being able just to concentrate on the keeping the main thing. And for me, the main thing is training horses and having this uninterrupted time where you can just completely do actually a better job than instead of meeting people and talking to people and running and doing this, that, and the other. Has been probably the biggest thing I've found of that you've just got more time spare to become more awesome at what you should be doing.
Great point. So Boyd, we're going to let you get back to that normal life in just 1 second. I have one final question for you, which is something I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, which is I think we can all notice that behind you there are two flags, and one is an Australian flag and the other one is a German flag, and the German flag actually is for your wife, Silva, who is from Germany, and she's an accomplished equestrian as well, and part of your overall operation. And I just thought, I should mention, sort of, since you brought in the family life, that if there was something that you happened to talk about having a family business.
Yeah, it's I'm married well, Dave. Married well. German girls, they're definitely strict, tough, and they love a clean house. But when I say married well, I don't think a normal woman would put up with my lifestyle. And in all seriousness, coming to America in 2007 with not much but a suitcase and Silva, my wife, with a dream, and being able to really go after this dream here in America of becoming the best in the country at my sport, which is 3-day eventing, and Silva's sport, which is dressage. And I got to say, it's been a wonderful journey having someone that's dreaming the same dream as you. And it's relentless work. It's hard work. It sounds glamorous, but there's days where it's raining and it's cold and it's windy, and every horse has to get fed and the stalls have got to get mucked out. And having a life partner, Dave, that shares your passion and cheers you on and eggs you on and sort of understands disappointment and highs and lows, and I'm very, very lucky to marry her. So she's a good girl, and I'm very fortunate that I don't think I would have had enough courage to come to America by myself and try and do what I've done if it was just me. It's so much easier when you've got a partner in crime.
Well, Boyd, you've been lucky to share your life with Silva, and we've been fortunate that you have shared some time with us. So take care of your body and
Will do.
get yourself ready for the 2021 Olympics. And we'll be looking forward to cheering you on. And thank you very, very much for joining us. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Raghu.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.